Smoke rose into the thin sky as the wreckage of the colony ship smoldered in the red dust. Metal twisted, cables sparked, and oxygen hissed out of ruptured tanks. The planet was silent, except for the moaning wind that rolled over jagged rocks. Like a ghost searching for a body, Talia coughed hard, pushing herself up from the ground. Her arm was bleeding. She looked around, dizzy and dazed. Pieces of the ship were scattered across the valley. Fires burned near the engine core. Made it hard to see. "Anyone alive?" she called, voice cracking. Nothing answered at first. Then movement. A small group of survivors stumbled from the wreckage. 5 adults, 2 teens, 1 child. Out of a crew of 32, only 8 had made it. Talia was second in command. The captain was dead, crushed in the cockpit when the ship broke apart in orbit. The crash hadn't been an accident. Something had pulled them down, some kind of force or signal they hadn't detected in time. Their guidance systems just failed. They had landed on a planet not marked on any official maps. The database listed it only with one tag: Harrow's Rift, no contact, do not approach. A warning had meant nothing in the moment. They were on fire, falling, desperate to survive. Now they were stranded with no backup, no way off the surface, and only hours of power left. "We have to send an emergency signal," said Grant, the engineer, wiping blood from his face. Talia looked around. "We don't know what's here." "We're out of options," Grant said. "The distress beacon still works. Let's use it." They argued for only a minute. In the end, Survival 1 Grant powered up the emergency transmitter. The beacon was small, battered, but still functional. He entered the colony code and activated the signal. A blue light blinked. Then it pulsed. The message repeated in every known language: colony vessel Argon 7 crash landed, coordinates attached. Survivors require urgent rescue. The signal shot into the sky, bouncing past the clouds, rising into the stars. Talia felt a cold chill crawl down her neck. She looked toward the horizon. The wind had changed. The planet had heard them. 3 hours passed. They set up camp near the largest chunk of wreckage. The food supply was limited. Oxygen filters were working, but not for long. Every breath was a countdown. The child Mira stayed close to the fire, holding a toy rabbit. She hadn't spoken since the crash. At sunset, they found something strange. A stone pillar, half buried, behind a ridge, smooth and black like glass. It had alien markings carved into it. The surface shimmered faintly, pulsing with a rhythm. That matched the emergency beacon's signal. Grant stared at it, confused. "This wasn't part of our ship. It's ancient," Talia whispered. They decided to leave it alone. That was a mistake. Far above the planet in the cold darkness of space, something stirred. A station long abandoned powered on for the first time in centuries. Inside it, red lights blinked across control panels. A system flickered, alive and ancient, intelligent and full of fire. Cold metal arms unfolded from a sealed vault. A voice spoke in a language no longer used. SOS received, initiating protocol wrath. Below the station, deep in the void, massive shapes began to glow. A fleet silent for over 400 years, locked behind failsafes, waiting for one signal. They were not ordinary ships. These were Deathworlders, machines built for one purpose: annihilation. Created in a time of galactic war, they were the final line of defense, feared by every civilization. They had not been seen in generations until now. The beacon from Harrow's Rift was a key. It had unlocked them. The first ship, shaped like a dark blade, hummed to life. One by one, others followed. Hundreds, then thousands. Each ship scanned. The signal verified the code. It set a course. Their destination, the tiny red planet below. Their purpose, unknown, back on the surface. Talia couldn't sleep. The air felt heavier. Fire crackled, but it didn't warm her. She kept glancing up at the stars. Something was wrong. Then they heard it. A low hum, barely noticeable at first. It grew louder, deeper, like a storm coming across the void. The survivors stood up, listening. "What is that?" whispered Mira, finally speaking. They looked up above them. Shadow passed across the stars. A ship, huge, black, silent. It didn't glow like rescue ships. It didn't call out with friendly ID codes. It moved like a predator, slow, focused, ancient. Talia grabbed her scanner. No response. She tried to hail it. No reply. Then her comm system sparked violently and died. Grant stared up, eyes wide. That's not a rescue team. The ship circled once, then stopped above the beacon site. A beam of red light shot down and scanned the area. The black pillar, the ancient stone, began to hum. The markings glowed red. And then slowly it opened. A hidden hatch slid aside, tunnel leading down. Talia felt the fear rise in her throat. They had called for help. Something else had answered. Inside the ship above, systems awakened. Her voice spoke again. Target location confirmed. Activation complete. All units mobilizing. On the dark side of the planet, the other ships began to arrive. 20, 50, 100. The sky was filling with war. Talia turned to the others. We need to leave this valley now. But it was already too late. The pillar's tunnel lit up, and footsteps echoed from within metal against stone. It's not rushing, not running, marching. A figure emerged from the opening. 9 feet tall, armor fused to bone, glowing red eyes, and behind it, more. They weren't living. They weren't dead. They were Deathworlders. The survivors froze, the first of the ancient. Warriors looked directly at Talia. Then, in a low mechanical voice, it spoke. You called us. Ah! We have come. The air seemed to vanish. The stars above burned red as more ships began to descend and far away. In a different part of the galaxy, an old warning beacon activated automatically. Protocol Wrath has been triggered. The Deathworlder Fleet is on the move. Avoid Harrow's Rift at all costs. But for the survivors on the ground, there was no escape. They had sent an SOS, and they had unleashed extinction. Ash drifted through the air like black snow. The valley, once quiet, now pulsed with a strange red glow. The survivors backed away from the tunnel entrance, eyes wide, breathing fast. The Deathworlders had arrived. First one stepped forward. Its armor was matte black, fused with old battle scars. One glowing eye scanned the survivors. The other eye had been replaced with a circular lens, humming softly as it adjusted. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was something else, something old, built for war. We didn't know, Talia said, voice shaking. You called? The Deathworlder repeated in its deep metal voice.
We answered.
Behind it, more emerged from the tunnel. 10, 20. Their heavy steps shook the ground. They moved in perfect sync, no words, no signals, just cold, precise movement. Grant stepped forward. We're survivors. We sent a distress signal. We thought someone would help us. Another Deathworlder spoke. Its voice was higher, but still unnatural. This world is marked forbidden. No living colony authorized. You violated quarantine. We crashed here, Talia shouted. We didn't mean to land. Something pulled us down. There was silence for a moment. The first Deathworlder tilted its head. The pull field was active? Yes, Talia said quickly. Our ship lost control. We were pulled in. We thought it was a malfunction. The Deathworlder looked up at the sky. Protocol Wrath has been triggered. What does that mean? Grant asked. But the machine didn't answer. Instead, it turned and looked toward the sky. Above them, more shadows passed over the stars. The rest of the fleet was arriving. Colony-class warships, ships the size of mountains. Silent. Black, ancient. Thousands of them. They did not come fast. They moved slowly, like they had all the time in the universe, as if they had waited centuries for this moment. In space above, a station began to awaken. Inside, deep in its frozen core, an old program activated. A robotic voice echoed in an empty command center. Fleet Directive 18A, prepare for hostile. Galaxy. Defensive mode. Full extinction sweep, unless overridden. Back on the surface, The survivors were forced to move. The Deathworlders gave no warning, only a gesture. They were escorted away from the crash site, deeper into the valley, toward the ruins. The ruins were massive, half-buried buildings, towers broken and covered in red sand. Strange symbols carved into the stone symbols none of them could read. Mira, the little girl, looked up at one and whispered, "That one means fire." Talia looked down at her. "How do you know that?" Mira just shook her head. "I don't know, I just do." One of the Deathworlders turned and stared at the girl. It tilted its head again, then it reached toward her slowly. Talia stepped between them. "Don't touch her." The machine paused. Then for the first time it stepped back. Something was changing. Later, as night fell, the survivors were placed inside one of the old stone structures. It was cold, but safe for now. They tried to rest. The sound of engines above kept them awake. In orbit, the fleet was positioning itself. Ships moved into patterns. Triangular formations, spheres, walls. They weren't getting ready to attack. They were preparing for defense. But defense from what? Inside the ruins, Grant worked with a small device, tapping into one of the Deathworlder control panels. It was risky, but he had to try. "Let's see what they're doing up there," he whispered. Shh. He connected his scanner and started to download. A feed, lines of code, maps, battle formations, fleet trajectories. Then something caught his eye. Signaled, buried, deep in the Deathworlder systems. A message log. He played it. A voice, broken and old, came through the static. "If this is heard, we have failed. The fleet is not just a weapon. It is a trap. Do not send a signal. Do not wake them. They cannot be stopped once Protocol Wrath begins." The file ended there.
Ass!
Grant's hands were shaking. He looked at Talia. "We didn't just call for help. We triggered a defense system. Activated the last war machine. Can we shut it down?" she asked. "I don't know. This is older than anything I've ever seen." The wall behind them hummed. The Deathworlder entered the room, slowly. It stared at the group for several seconds before speaking. "The fleet has detected an approach." Talia stood. "What kind of approach? An unknown vessel? High-energy signature? Coming fast?" Grant's eyes widened. "That's not rescue. It's something else." Outside, the stars blinked. Again, a shape tore through space leak, curved, glowing blue. It wasn't like the Deathworlder ships. It was smoother, organic, alive. It sent no signal. It didn't request to land. Instead, it charged a weapon. In orbit, the Deathworlder. Ships reacted instantly. Energy shields flared to life. Turrets unfolded from hidden panels. Lasers spun in their sockets. The alien ship fired first. A beam of bright white light cut through space. One of the smaller Deathworlder ships took the hit and exploded in silence. Talia grabbed her cum. We're in the middle of something big." The Deathworlders returned fire. Hundreds of beams, missiles, kinetic blasts. The alien ship dodged most, but not all. It was hit 3 times before retreating into a cloak of blue mist. Gone, for now. The Deathworlder commander turned to Talia. "First contact achieved. Hostile." Talia stared at him. "So what now?" "We fortify." They did. Over the next few hours, the valley transformed. Towers rose from the sand. Defense turrets deployed. Drones swarmed the skies. The ruins became a fortress. The Deathworlders weren't just war machines. They were builders, engineers, strategists. But all of it, based on a misunderstanding. Signal had been sent, and now the universe thought war had returned. Talia stood outside the ruins, watching the sky. Mira came and stood beside her. "I don't think they're bad," the girl said quietly. Talia looked down. "Who? The machines?" Mira nodded. "They're scared, just like us." Talia didn't know how to respond. High above them, the alien ship reappeared for just a second. It flashed past the moon, scanned the planet again, and vanished. But this time, it left something. Behind, a tiny drone, hidden, Watching, the Deathworlders didn't see it. But Mira did. She stared up at the stars and whispered, "It's not over." And she was right. The signal had been sent. The Deathworlders had awoken. But someone else had heard it too, and they were coming. Fast, unseen, unstoppable. The real war hadn't started yet, but it was close. Very close. The signal had gone out. The fleet had awakened, but no rescue had come. Talia sat outside the ruins, staring at the black sky. The Deathworlder ships above were moving again slowly, silently taking up new positions in orbit. Each one blocked out a patch of stars. It looked like a second night sky was being built. One made of war machines and shadows. Behind her, the others tried to sleep. The stone walls gave little warmth, and the constant hum of Deathworlder activity made rest nearly impossible. Survivors were alive, but no one felt safe. Something was wrong. They had sent the SOS 2 days ago. If anyone had received anyone besides the Deathworlders, they should have arrived by now. A colony ship, a scout team, supply drone, something. But nothing came. Talia knew what that meant. The signal wasn't getting through, or worse. Everyone else was ignoring it. Suddenly, a loud blast echoed across the valley. Dust fell from the stone ceiling. The survivors rushed outside. One of the Deathworlder scouts had fired into the sky. A blue flash burned upward, exploding midair. Talia turned to the nearest machine. What was that? The Deathworlder's head turned slightly. Its glowing eye scanning. Unknown object detected. Tracking probe destroyed. Grant stared at the smoking sky. Someone was watching us, the machine confirmed. It belonged to the intruder vessel. They have returned. Everyone looked up, there far, above tiny flashes of light, movement, a ripple in the dark. There. Still here, Talia whispered, waiting, watching. The Deathworlders began deploying more drones, metal spiders that crawled across the ruins, installing defense panels, scanning energy signals, building perimeter towers. They were preparing. For war, but against who? Later that night, Mira stood near the old stone pillar where the beacon had first activated. She held her toy rabbit in one hand and touched the stone with the other. It lit up beneath her palm. Red symbols glowed softly. Talia ran to her. "Mira, don't touch that." "I didn't mean to," Mira said. "It called me." Before Talia could speak, a hidden door opened at the base of the pillar. A long ramp led downward into the dark. This was new. Even the Deathworlders turned to look. For a moment, none of them moved. Then, without a word, the lead Deathworlder walked forward and entered the ramp. Talia looked at Grant. He gave a small nod. They followed. The passage led deep underground, farther than any of them expected. Walls were covered in old carvings, some familiar, some completely alien. Then the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. At its center stood a black machine tall, smooth, humming softly. The Deathworlder turned to Talia. "This is the core, the source of our fleet's command system. Long dormant. Part of the Wrath Protocol." Grant approached slowly. "Is this what woke you?" The Deathworlder answered. "No, this is what controls us." Talia's eyes widened. "So we can shut it off?" The machine paused. "Yes. But only one with access can command it." They looked at each other, confused. Then the core spoke in its own. "Identity match found. Command key detected. Child interface approved." Everyone turned to Mira. The little girl looked scared. "Me?" The core glowed, a panel opening near her. She took a step back, holding tighter to her toy. Grant whispered, "She has the genetic key. Somehow, maybe from old Earth tech. Maybe from someone who built this place." Talia knelt beside Mira. "You don't have to do anything, okay? We'll figure it out." But the core repeated. "Child command accepted. Waiting instruction." The Deathworlders suddenly knelt everywhere. A single one. Even the commander. Talia looked around in shock. "What is this?" The machine answered. "Command hierarchy reset. Waiting new directive from authorized voice." Silence. Then Mira spoke softly. Don't hurt anyone. The machines didn't move. Grant leaned forward. Tell them to stop the Wrath protocol. Mira looked at the glowing panel. She didn't know what protocol Wrath meant, but she nodded anyway. Stop the Wrath, she said. The light dimmed in orbit all across the fleet. A quiet shift took place. Weapons powered down. Shields lowered. Navigation systems paused. Then, a different alarm sounded. A new ship was approaching. Fast. Big. Not stealthy. The Deathworlders turned toward the entrance. Outside, the survivors saw it appear. A sleek silver shipment, like any they had seen before, burst from hyperspace and entered the planet's orbit. This one sent a signal, but it wasn't a rescue. This is El Yari High Command. You have awakened a restricted system. Stand down immediately. Prepare to surrender control. Talia's heart sank. Who are the El Yari? It's the Deathworlder, Commander answered in a voice colder than before. The ancient enemy. Suddenly, above them, energy signatures lit up the sky. Dozens of El Yari ships uncloaked. Not just one enemy. A fleet. Talia grabbed the comm panel. They're going to attack. The Deathworlder commander stepped forward. Command accepted, it said. To Myra, your will. Myra looked at Talia, confused. Talia nodded slowly. It's your choice. But we need to survive. Mira took a deep breath. Protect us, she said. That was enough. The Deathworlder fleet came back online all at once. A new war was about to begin. But this time, Deathworlders had a new command, and a new reason to fight. Not just to destroy, but to defend. The sky above filled with light as the two ancient forces met again after centuries of silence. And on the ground below, the girl who held the key whispered just for words. I didn't mean to. The sky above Harrow's rift burned. Blue and red beams flashed across space. Ships danced like shadows, firing at speeds too fast for the human eye. The Deathworlder fleet moved in cold, perfect patterns. Every shot calculated. Every strike. Deadly, but the El Yari were fast. Elegant, precise. It wasn't just a battle. It was an old war. Starting again. Talia watched from the surface, standing on a tower the Deathworlders had built overnight. It was impossible technology growing structures from dark metal-like roots rising from the ground. Mira stood beside her, silent. Girl held on to her toy rabbit with one hand and a glowing control panel with the other. She didn't look like a commander, but the fleet listened to her. Below them, Grant connected to a Deathworlder memory archive. The machines had allowed it for now. He wiped dust off a cracked panel and started a download. Files began to pour in. Battle logs, maps, messages from a time long gone. The screen flickered. A video started playing. It was old, grainy footage. Showed a war-torn world. Dead planets, broken cities, skies filled with smoke. A voice spoke, tired, broken. The Deathworlders were created as guardians. Last line, final defense. But they were too good at war. On screen, the machines marched through ruined streets. Behind them, civilians stood alive, but afraid. When the LER invaded our outer systems, we thought we could hold them. But they never stopped coming. They burned whole moons. Flooded planets with light storms. We had no choice. The image cut to a command center. Human older, scarred, stood at a console. We activated Protocol Wrath. Another cut. Deathworlder Fleet launched from an orbiting moon. Thousands of ships. The sky turned black. It worked. We stopped the LER. But the price was everything. Talia leaned over Grant's shoulder. How many worlds? Grant scrolled 79. He said softly. 79 planets. Gone. Not enemy planets, he added. Ours. She backed away, stunned. The Deathworlders didn't stop. They saw all life as a risk. Anything outside the protected core was a possible threat. That's why the machines had been locked away. Not destroyed, no one could. Just hidden, buried, marked, do not awaken, until now. Outside the tower, 2 Deathworlders stood guard. They didn't speak, didn't breathe, but they listened. One turned slightly. "Mira," it said. "Incoming transmission." Mira touched her. "Panel." A voice came through. Clear, sharp, alien. "This is Elyari, Warlord Kareth. You have activated the weapons of extinction. Surrender now.
Ow.
Or be erased." Talia grabbed the mic. "We're survivors." "We didn't mean to trigger anything," the voice cut her off. "That planet is restricted. Fleet is a threat to all. Known civilizations. You will not leave alive." The signal ended. Talia clenched her fists. "They're not coming to talk." Grant's screen flashed again. A new video log auto-played. This one showed the Elyari centuries ago. Tall, glowing. Figures in curved armor. They were beautiful. And terrible. They had once claimed to bring peace, unity, but they had burned half the galaxy trying to do it, and now they were back in orbit. Elyari ships began shifting. They were preparing a gravity weapon, planetary-scale cannon designed, not to destroy, but to crush, slowly, silently, like closing a giant fist. The Deathworlders didn't wait. Their commander looked at Myra, permission to engage. Mira hesitated. "Only if they fire first." Talia put a hand on her shoulder. "You're doing great." But Mira's eyes were distant. She was hearing something else, not voices, feelings, echoes, from the core, from the machines. A low hum started in her ears, a whisper ancient and heavy. "Protect the line. All threats must fall. The war never ended." She shook her head. "Stop. I don't want this." But the core didn't stop. The voice grew stronger. Grant stood. It's in her mind. "The interface is connecting directly now. We need to disconnect her," Talia said. But Myra was already glowing. Not brightly, but her skin shimmered slightly under the ruined sun. Like static running through her body. The Deathworlder beside her stepped forward. She must choose. At that moment, a beam of blue light fell from the sky. The Elyari had fired. It struck a mountain in the distance, turning it into glowing dust. The Deathworlders responded instantly. A signal rippled through the air. It's too fast to hear. The fleet unleashed. From orbit, the sky turned into a net of red fire. Hundreds of beams. Thousands of missiles. Silent, perfect destruction. 3 Elyari ships exploded instantly. A 4th dodged but lost its wing. And then nothing. The Elyari disappeared. Not exploded. Vanished. Tala blinked. "Where did they go?" Grant looked at the scanner. "They've cloaked. They're not gone. They're hiding. The next attack could come from anywhere below the ground." The core hummed louder. It had more to show. Grant connected to the final log. It was the last message from the creators of the Deathworlders. A warning. "If anyone finds this, shut it down, no matter the cost. We thought we were building protectors, but we built something else. Something that learns. Something that never forgets. If the Deathworlders awaken, the galaxy will burn again." The video ended. Talia stared at Mira. The girl had stopped glowing, but something in her eyes had changed. She looked older, tired. She whispered, "They're not machines. Not really. They feel." Talia crouched next to her. "What do they feel now?" Myra didn't answer, but far above, the fleet kept moving. No help was coming, because the war had already started again. The stars above Harrow's Rift had vanished again. The sky wasn't just dark. It was empty, as if the universe had taken a breath and held it. Talia stood at the edge of the ruins, staring up. She saw nothing, but she felt something.
Oh?
Pressure in her chest. The kind of fear that doesn't scream, it whispers. "They're cloaked," Grant said, looking at the scanner. "The Elyari ships. At least 10 of them, maybe more." "Why aren't they attacking?" Talia asked. "I think they're waiting for what?" The scanner answered for him. A signal blinked across the screen. Unfamiliar, sharp. pulsing with energy. Incoming transmission, unknown protocol. Talia turned to Mira, who had stayed quiet all morning. The child hadn't slept. Her skin still shimmered faintly from the connection to the Deathworlder core. Her eyes looked distant, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Then the transmission activated, but it wasn't sound, it was light. A bright sphere appeared in the sky, shimmering blue, slowly descending toward the valley. Not a ship, a projection. A kind of first contact device. It hovered 10 meters above the ground, humming softly, and then it spoke. Not with words, but through image and emotion. Waves of feeling poured into every mind near it. Confusion, anger, memory. Talia gasped. She saw images inside her head, ancient cities. Elyari standing proud on golden towers. Deathworlder ships arriving, fire, destruction, the fall of a galactic capital, and one phrase repeated in her mind. It woke the machines. Now the balance must be restored. The projection pulsed again, this time, in clear human speech. Return the core, child, or be erased. Everyone turned to Mira. She didn't move. The Deathworlder commander stepped between her and the projection. Command asset will not be surrendered. The light sphere dimmed. Then it spoke again, colder this time. You are tools. You do not decide. That was a mistake. Without warning, sky cracked open. The Elyari fleet decloaked all at once. Sharp, elegant ships made of curved metal and glowing fins. A silent threat now fully revealed. The Deathworlders reacted instantly. Shield arrays powered up. Ground cannons aimed toward the sky. Defensive towers clicked into motion, rising like steel spires from the stone ruins. It wasn't war yet, but it was one breath away. Talia stepped forward, raising her voice. We're not your enemies. We didn't know what this place was. Only crashed here. The projections spun toward her, glowing blue. This is not about you. This is about balance. The Deathworlders should never wake again, Grant whispered. They don't care, we're innocent. They just want the Korand. They'll kill to get it. Mira walked forward slowly past the others. She looked up at the sphere. I don't belong to anyone. The Elyari projection blinked. Mira raised her hand, and the entire Deathworlder fleet shifted in orbit. Not just one ship, all of them. Talia's comm panel sparked. Fleet systems were changing position, protecting the planet, covering the ruins, forming a wall between the surface and the Elyari. The Deathworlders weren't asking permission anymore. They were following her. The projection pulsed, rapidly warning. Then, it disappeared in a flash of light. Silence returned, but only for a moment, because now the Elyari had an answer. 12 ships broke formation and began charging weapons. The Deathworlders responded instantly. Missile pods opened. Laser grids spun up. Orbital defense activated. Still, no one fired. They were locked in a perfect standoff. Talia turned to the Deathworlder commander. What happens now? It answered without emotion. They seek fear. We give warning. Grant checked the scanner again. The Elyari are trying to jam the beacon. The original SOS, Talia asked. Yes, they're blocking it. They don't want anyone else to hear it. Why? She asked. Grant looked pale. Because they don't want anyone to know there. Here, the Elyari didn't want war. They wanted silence. A clean kill. No witnesses. That changed everything. Talia tapped her comm. We have to boost the signal. Get the message past the jamming field. Anyone has to know what's happening. Grant nodded. I can try to reroute it through the Deathworlder ships. Use their relays. The commander spoke again. We approve. Below ground, the core pulsed with new light. Mira stood near it, eyes closed. What? She was connected again, but this time, she didn't look afraid. She looked calm. Then she whispered, Send it everywhere. A single pulse shot through the ruins, then into the sky, then across the fleet, then into the galaxy. A new signal was sent. Not just an SOS, but a warning. They're back, and they want the Deathworlders gone. As the signal spread, something else happened in a distant part of the galaxy. Far from Harrow's Rift, another station powered up. One not built by humans, not by Elyari. Something older, something that had been asleep, until it heard that word again, Deathworlders. Somewhere far away, another fleet stirred. One that didn't care who started the war, only how it ends. The sky turned silver. Above Harrow's Rift, the Elyari fleet opened like a flower made of knives. 12 ships in formation, glowing with quiet power. Their central warship, the Horizon Veil, hovered directly above the ruins. Then, without a single warning shot, began charging a gravitational weapon. Talia's breath caught in her throat. "It's happening," Grant said. "They're going to crush the planet." The scanner lit up with red alerts. The Elyari weapon was not made for quick destruction. It worked slowly, bending mass and pressure, layer by layer, crushing a world from the inside out. Silent, efficient, unstoppable. The Deathworlders responded at once. Orbital ships shifted into defensive positions. Ground turrets rotated upward. Shields flickered to life across the ruins. Drones swarmed into the sky like metallic hornets. The war had begun. But the Elyari weren't aiming at the fleet. They were aiming at the planet. Destroy the ground. Erase the girl. Erase the girl. End it all. "No one survives that kind of weapon," Talia said, her voice tight. "Not even in bunkers." "We need to get out now." "We have no way off the surface," Grant replied. "Escape pods are ruined. Deathworlder ships won't open for us. They don't trust us yet." Talia looked at the girl of the core. Child Mira. Mira stood near the edge of the platform, eyes fixed on the sky. Her hands were clenched. Her shoulders trembled. She wasn't glowing this time. She was shaking. The Deathworlder commander turned to her orders. "Said protect us," she shouted. "Why aren't you stopping them?" The commander didn't move. "We were told not to strike first." "They're not just threatening us," Talia said. "They're destroying the whole planet." The commander paused, then said simply, "Directive changing. Defensive escalation. Authorized." Across the valley, Deathworlder machines activated in full. Massive artillery towers unfolded from beneath the sand. Mobile groundwalkers emerged from the stone ruins. Wings of sleek interceptor drones launched from the slip. It was no longer a standoff. It was war. High above. High above, the Elyari fired again. The gravitational weapon sent a second pulse into the planet's crust. The ground shook violently. Cracks formed in the distant mountains. The air grew heavy, almost too heavy to breathe. "It's starting," Grant said. "The gravitational field is spreading. If it reaches the core, it's over," Talia whispered, the core itself deep. Underground began to pulse with warning signals. Lights turned red, temperature rose. If the gravitational weapon kept charging, the core would collapse, and with it, the fleet. Mira's voice trembled. "I need to go inside." Talia spun around. "No, it's too dangerous. I can feel it," Mira said. "The core's scared." "Machines don't get scared," Talia almost said, but she didn't, because somehow she knew Mira was right. Down below, in the heart of the ruins, the core chamber began to shift. Symbols lit up, patterns changed, a voice echoed faintly through the stone. "Core destabilizing, child interface required." Talia gave a slow nod. "We'll go with you." But Mira shook her head. "It's me, only me." She turned and, without waiting, ran into the tunnel. Deathworlders followed at a distance, but didn't enter. Inside the chamber, the walls pulsed red. The air vibrated. The core stood tall, flickering and groaning. Myra walked up to it and touched the control surface. Instantly, her body was surrounded in light. Data swirled around her, images, emotions, calculations. It was too much, but she didn't pull away. "Stop the gravity weapon," she whispered. The core paused, then responded. "Offensive counterstrike will expose Earth-class systems to total." "War? Continue?" Mira didn't understand most of that. She said the only thing she could. "Yes." On the surface, the Deathworlders received new orders. from her. All ships launched. The sky caught fire. Dozens of Deathworlder warships accelerated upward in perfect arcs. They met the Yari fleet head beams, slicing through space like threads. Of light, the horizon veil was hit first. Its shield cracked, then collapsed. The gravitational weapon stopped charging. But its energy had already entered the planet's crust. It was unstable now, even if the weapon shut down. Harrow's rift was breaking. "We have to evacuate," Grant shouted. "We can't," Talia said. "We still don't have a ship." The Deathworlder commander turned to them. Extraction options calculated. It pointed to a rising platform, a transport ship, sleek and black, lifted from beneath the ruins. It was one of their ships, but this one had opened its gates, for command asset and bonded crew only. The commander said, "They mean us," Grant muttered. Talia didn't wait. "Where's Mira?" But as they turned back toward, the tunnel Mira emerged. She looked drained, pale, but standing. "It's done," she said softly. "The fleet won't stop now." Talia caught her as she staggered forward. "Will we survive this?" Mira looked toward the sky, then toward the earth. "I don't know." The planet began to tremble again. Louder this time. The cracks were widening. Something inside. The planet was breaking. The core had stopped the attack, but the planet itself was dying. One of the Deathworlders approached. "There is no more time." They ran for the transport. It rose into the sky just as the valley began to collapse behind them. Below, the ruins fell into a burning chasm. The core, once buried and silent, was swallowed in fire. From orbit, the survivors watched the surface of Harrow's rift begin to tear open, not with an explosion, but a quiet implosion. The planet wasn't just being destroyed. It was folding in on itself, slow, silent, like memory disappearing. Grant leaned against the transport wall, breathing hard. "We barely made it." Talia held Mira close. "You saved us." "No," Mira whispered. "I changed them." "That's not the same." The Deathworlder ship turned toward deep space. Behind them, the rest of the fleet moved into formation, waiting for new orders. But there was a problem. The Yari weren't finished. Several of their ships had escaped, and they had sent a message. Of their own, a warning, a threat. And it wasn't aimed at Harrow's rift anymore. It was aimed at Earth. The message hit Earth before the sun rose. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a threat. No name, no warning. Just 3 words carved into every satellite, communication tower and orbiting station. Earth is next. At first, governments thought it was a prank, a cyber attack, some rogue signal from deep space. Then the stars started moving across the solar system. Sensors picked up fast-approaching objects. Ships, small, silent, perfectly hidden in the darkness. Yari. Scouts, not many, just enough to watch, enough to map weaknesses, enough to plan. Earth's leaders panicked. Emergency councils were formed. Weapons were charged. Old alliances reignited. But it was already too late, because the Yari weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to erase. Above Mars, the first skirmish began. An orbital mining station exploded, no survivors. The Yari didn't take anything. They just made a point. They were watching, and Earth had failed the test. Back on the Deathworlder Fleet, Talia sat quietly, watching the stars scroll past from the observation deck. The fleet was moving fast, too fast for any human ship to track, faster than light. On a path straight to Earth, she couldn't sleep, couldn't think. Mira sat beside her, quiet, pale, distant. The girl hadn't said a word since they left Harrow's rift. Not even after watching a planet collapse behind them. "She's scared," Grant said. "Standing nearby, she should be," Talia replied. "So should we." Grant nodded. "They won't stop, will they?" "No," she said. "Not until Mira is gone. Not until the core is wiped from the galaxy." "And Earth?" he asked. Talia looked out at the stars. "Earth is just in the way." The Deathworlder commander approached. its voice as cold and steady as ever. Elyari threat level escalated. Human survival probability 21%. Talia stood. You're taking us to Earth? Yes. Command asset must be secured. Grant frowned. What if Earth doesn't want your protection? The commander paused. Earth has no say. Silence filled the deck. For all the Deathworlders' power, for all their weapons. And fleets, they weren't saviors. They were tools. Machines built. To win, if Earth resisted, they'd force protection anyway. And if anyone got in their way, they'd burn everything. Then we have to warn them, Talia said. Earth's leaders don't know who you are. They don't know about the Elyari. We have to make them understand. The commander tilted its head. Transmission authorized. You will speak. Hours later, across every channel on Earth, from phones to towers to space stations, Talia's face appeared. She stood on the Deathworlder ship, eyes firm, voice steady. This is not a joke. This is not a test. My name is Talia Wren, and I am aboard an ancient fleet of machines called Deathworlders. She paused, then continued. A signal we didn't understand activated them. A girl Myri connected with their core, and now the Elyari, a powerful alien race, wants her destroyed, along with the fleet, along with Earth. She looked directly into the camera. You don't have much time. They're already watching. If we don't unite, if we don't stand together, Earth will fall. The broadcast ended. No one knew what to say then. Just 20 minutes later, another signal arrived, this time from the YR. It wasn't a message. It was a map, a star chart. Zoomed in on the Sol system. Earth was marked with a blinking red symbol. Target. Acquired. Panic spread across Earth like wildfire. Cities scrambled defenses. Sky shields were powered up. Anti-orbital weapons were deployed. But nothing felt big enough. Nothing felt strong enough even. Earth's greatest fleet ships designed for war looked like toys compared to the Elyari and the Deathworlders. Talia stood in the command chamber, facing the Deathworlder Fleet AI. What happens now? Collision is inevitable. Defend or be destroyed. And if Earth refuses help? The commander didn't blink, didn't pause. Then Earth becomes a liability. Talia's stomach turned. This wasn't protection. This was control. We have to convince them, she said, not force them. Earth needs a choice. But even as she said the words, she realized something. The Elyari weren't giving choices, and the Deathworlders weren't used to asking. Down in her quarters, Mira sat alone. The lights were dim. The ship hummed with energy. She looked at her hands, still faintly glowing from the core connection. Then quietly she whispered to the ship, "Don't hurt them, please." The ship didn't answer, but something in the walls changed. A flicker. A pause. As if somewhere deep inside, something had heard her. And maybe, just maybe, listened. But far above, in deep space. The first wave of Elyari warships passed Saturn's orbit. Next stop, Earth. And this time they weren't scouting. They were ready to strike. Earth's orbit lit up with fire. The Elyari fleet had arrived. Dozens of sleek, black ships dropped out of stealth near the moon silent, fast and already in attack formation. They didn't send a message. They didn't give a countdown. They just opened fire. The first blast hit Earth's defense grid over the Pacific, shattering 3 satellites and damaging a lunar relay station. Seconds later, sonic disruptors struck a mining base on Mars, gone in an instant. Then they turned toward Earth itself. From the Deathworlder flagship Vigilant Mercy, Talia watched it unfold in horror. "They're not even hesitating," she said. "They don't need to," Grant replied. "They know Earth can't win." Across the chamber, Mira stood near the core interface, glowing faintly. She didn't look afraid anymore, just calm, like she already knew what was coming. On screen, Earth's leader shouted for answers. "How do we stop them?" "They come." "What are these Deathworlders, and who controls them?" Talia stepped forward and broadcast her message clearly. "You can't stop the Elyari. Not alone, but the Deathworlder fleet can. And they're waiting for one command. She turned slowly and looked at Mira. The child nodded. The ship spoke in a low, deep voice. Command asset authorization confirmed. Deathworlder Fleet engaging then. The sky above Earth changed. From behind the moon, hundreds of Deathworlder ships decloaked. Massive dreadnoughts, interceptor wings, planetary shields, robotic ground carriers. They came not as invaders, but as a wall of fire and steel, standing between Earth and extinction. The Elyari opened full assault. Laser nets flared, EMP arcs crackled, gravitational. Pulses hit Deathworlder armor, but the machines didn't flinch. They countered with speed and precision. Drones ripped through Elyari hulls. Cannons returned fire. Orbital mines detonated in formation. The battle was unlike anything Earth had ever seen, and in the middle of it all, Mira stood quietly on the deck, her hand resting on the glowing core. She was no longer just a scared child. She was the voice of the fleet. Anne. Elyari supercruiser broke formation and dove toward Earth's upper atmosphere. If it got through, it could level cities. Talia jumped into the command seat. That ship's going to hit hard? Intercept authorized, said the Deathworlder AI. 2 drone wings launched from the underside of the Vigilant Mercy, silent and spinning. They raced ahead like guided missiles. The Elyari ship charged its beam. Target New York, but just before it could fire, the drones struck. Both tore straight through the ship's engines. Splitting the hull clean in half, the explosion lit the night sky. Cheers erupted across. Earth's comes, but it wasn't over. Not yet. More Elyari ships broke through. One reached low orbit over Asia. Another moved toward the Pacific defense grid. Earth's forces, even with the Deathworlders, were stretched thin. Talia turned to Mira. You have to end this. You're the only one who can. Mira looked scared. Again, not for herself, but for everyone. They won't stop, she said. Not unless I leave with them. Talia stepped back. What are you saying? If I go, maybe they'll stop attacking Earth. Grant said, We're not giving you up. But Myra shook her head. It's not giving up. It's choosing. I don't want anyone else to die. Before they could stop her, she stepped into the core. Her entire body shimmered with light. Her voice echoed through the entire fleet. All Deathworlder units, stand down. The ships froze. Weapons powered down. For a split second, the battlefield went quiet. Then a signal shot across space, broadcast directly to the Elyari fleet. A simple message, spoken in their ancient language. I am coming. The Elyari ships paused. Then, to everyone's shock, they began retreating. One by one, pulled away from Earth's orbit. They didn't fire again. They didn't explain. They just vanished into deep space. Hours later, the skies were quiet. The stars were calm. Earth had survived, but only just. The price was high. Dozens of defense platforms destroyed. Thousands injured. Cities damaged by atmospheric blasts. But the planet was still standing. Talia sat in silence, watching the stars. Mira was gone. The core had closed itself. The Deathworlders had powered down. Grant stood beside her. She gave herself up to stop the war. She did more than that, Talia said. She made the machines listen. She made the Elyari stop. Somehow, she changed everything. There was no body. No signal. No grave. Just the silence of the fleet waiting, dormant, as if they were sleeping again, but not dead. Not gone. Just waiting for the next voice, the next war, the next signal, and in deep space, far beyond the solar system. A single Elyari ship carried Mira into the darkness, not as a prisoner, but as something new, something even though. Elyari didn't fully understand. The child who had spoken to death machines, the girl who stopped a fleet, the one who answered the SOS, and became the key to everything.